Hello and welcome to another episode of the Third Space Podcast. This is Bennett, bringing you episode 28, Geographical Delusion. It's an interesting title. Well, it's 2 words, and in this podcast we cover 2 topics. The first one, we bring back a segment that I love, Daniel hates, called Daniel Does Science, where basically I'm just making fun of Daniel because he doesn't know very much about science. And this time I'm especially mean, and I pick a subject that I know he is very bad at, geography. So I've got some geography questions for him, and we see how well or how poorly he does. So that's pretty funny to just kind of laugh at him. But he can laugh at himself too, so that's fine. And then after that, we launch into a discussion about the utility of self-delusion. Kind of an interesting topic, whether it's ever useful essentially to lie to yourself and to live in your own little world, away from reality. So it's kind of interesting. I've not really thought about that much before, so we have that discussion. Another thing to note about this podcast episode is that because it was a beautiful spring day today, I did a walkabout podcast. So I had my lapel mic and mobile microphone and was walking outside around the lake, which means that there's some ambient noise here and there throughout the podcast. I did some audio filtering to get the worst of the wind out, but there are a few places where it's still kind of windy, so I hope you'll forgive the audio. Sometimes you can hear some birds chirping and some dog leashes and some people chatting, so there's a little bit of ambient noise. I don't think it's too terribly distracting. You can usually hear my voice pretty clearly through it. But I will also say this, since I'm in the introduction, this is the appropriate place for it. If you listen to this podcast and you absolutely hate hearing these distracting noises, the ambient noises, the wind and the chirps and frogs and ducks and whatnot, wildlife, if you really hate that, then let us know. You can always get in touch with us at mail.thirdspace@gmail.com. We don't really get that much feedback, so we just kind of do whatever we want. I kind of like doing that anyway. But if you absolutely hate it, let us know, and maybe I will try to mitigate the noise a little bit more, or I guess maybe just not do it. I don't know. But if you hate it, let us know. If you don't mind, also let us know. That would be nice. But anyway, that's it. It's a walkabout podcast this time. We weren't befouled by audio settings on the mic or faulty wires or anything, so the full conversation came through very well. So without further ado, I will let the episode begin. I hope you enjoy episode 28, Geographical Delusion.
Bennett, hello.
Hello, Daniel.
Welcome to Third Space. It's my space. It's your space.
No, it's your space.
It's our space.
Third space. Well, we managed. We got through that one. All right.
Yeah, I liked it.
How are you doing?
It's getting better.
This fine weekend.
Well, I don't know if you could tell my voice is it's kind of rich and buttery smooth, even
Deep
a little better
than manlier than normal.
A little manlier than normal.
You're usually pretty effeminate, but this time
I'd say I'm usually very manly, and now I'm extraordinarily manly.
Oh, okay. Well, yeah, that's another way to look at it.
I don't know if it's the beginnings of a cold or whatever. I am fully vaccinated, so it seems unlikely that I have COVID or something. But I just, I have I woke up with a sort of a dry throat, and that sort of associated. Do you have that when you have a dry throat? Maybe the sniffles and your voice will go down, and not just a nasally thing, but actually your voice will be down an octave or so. I don't know.
Sorry, as you can tell, I'm doing a walkabout.
I like it
this time. So it's windy, and you have neighbors outside that we're talking. So
I like it. It makes it authentic and raw and real.
That's right. Yeah. So, but the conversation will probably be loud enough to overhear. I certainly hope so. So yeah, you're asking me, when I wake up in the morning and have a dry throat, does it make my voice get more manly?
I mean, why? Okay, I usually when a sickness is associated with or a cold, you get nasally, and I think that that's true even right now. But it also gets deeper, and I don't understand that part.
So you're asking why that happens, maybe?
Yeah, or is that just a perception that I'm really just more nasally, and so it appears deeper? But no, I think it's like it's just a little deeper right now.
Yeah, I mean, I think it actually is a little bit deeper, or maybe it's just a frequency shift. So, if you have nasal congestion, then the sound that you produce, it can't resonate as much. Like your nasal cavity, your sinuses, there's actually a lot of air in there. There's a lot of space inside of your head, and your voice reverberates inside of that space, and it changes the timbre of your voice. And so when you're congested, all that space is filled with mucus, and the sound doesn't reverberate in the same way. So it actually sounds different, and it probably attenuates the higher frequencies of your voice, and that contributes to it sounding overall just a little bit more muted.
So you're saying our voice has to do with cavernous sinus?
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah. And so you throw mucus and stuff, and it's gonna echo differently.
Yeah, that's exactly right. Yeah, definitely. And I mean, there's another component of it as well, like your vocal cords. The way that they vibrate. I could see that potentially changing as well if you're very congested, or if you're dehydrated, or your body's balance is off. I could see that affecting your vocal cords as well.
Well, what about puberty? Why does your voice? I mean, what did testicles and voice having what's
if you get kicked voice in your testicles, then your voice goes up like this?
Yes, yeah. At least that's the classic.
So that's that's the link you're looking for there, I think.
Yeah. Or when they drop and you hit puberty, they drop and you go hello or whatever. But I guess we all accept voice deepens. For males anyway, a lot. I guess for females too, it changes to some degree. It's just, okay, why? I always have just gone, yeah, well, that makes sense just because I see it happen a lot, but I've never thought, why does puberty make vocal cords change? Or is it vocal cords not changing? It's something else?
Well, your voice is purely physiological. Your voice is a physical engineering reaction to the vibration of your vocal cords and the resonance inside your head and your upper respiratory system. So, your voice is purely determined by the shape and structure of your body. And of course, when you go through puberty, your hormones are signaling your body to change, and it does change. The shape and form of your body changes significantly, and so it makes sense that your voice would change as well. I mean, if you're asking specifically, does your larynx expand, and does your vocal cords, get thicker or whatever? Maybe. I don't know that for sure. I mean, it seems plausible.
And is my link to the testicles, that wasn't entirely a joke, is there something there?
Yeah, I mean, there is something. I mean, your testicles are sex organs and contribute to, your hormone balance for boys, obviously.
Yeah.
And that is what affects puberty. That's why, eunuchs of the past, castrated men, they would have them in choirs, right? They would castrate them. And
castratos.
Yeah,
or something?
castratos, right? And their voice wouldn't deepen because of that. So.
Which is really twisted. In order to maintain that beautiful angelic voice, we will castrate you. I mean, that was the sacrifice you made so you could sing.
Right.
I mean,
right.
Woo!
Yeah, really strange phenomenon when people will destroy their bodies to fit that kind of role. Really interesting.
But I mean, do people destroy their bodies frequently to fit roles or engage in a talent? I mean, but it sounds different to say, I work out a lot in order to be an athlete or something, and that's in some ways modifying your body, but it just doesn't sound like destroying,
Right. Well, yeah, it's hard for me anyway to fashion castration in any way other than destruction, right? I don't see how that could be beneficial unless you had, a cancer or something.
Right.
And even then, it's still destruction. It's just less destruction than it otherwise would be.
I mean, it's essentially like an amputation.
Yeah.
Like, you don't want to do this, but it's better. It's the best of the alternatives.
Getting my voice amputated. I want to kick off this podcast with a segment we haven't done in a long time, and you're going to hate me for it. But it is Daniel Does Science. And
yeah.
I know that you're in a real good spot to do some science.
Well, we've been talking science. I'm all warmed up. But, like, right. Obviously I kind of like it, but I do not like being so vulnerable as to be exposed of my naivety. Like, this is, like, admittedly, there are just giant gaps. Like, the way I approached education in high school, and that's pretty much where my scientific education ended, like, it was just a task to be memorized and flash memorized for a test. I didn't make real world applications. I just didn't care. It was just get an A and move on. And so, yeah, my scientific understanding of the world is lacking. Although I would say that I am a reasonably logical person, so so I'm an interesting person to ask scientific questions because I'm not going to know the answers, but, like, I can sort of think through it.
That's right. That's why I like Daniel Does Science, because you have this interesting mix of hilarious ignorance that I laugh at, and some insightful connections that you draw. And, there have been times in the past when we've done this and you figured something out. And it's kind of like, oh, that's nice. That's impressive.
I'm nervous, though. All of this, let's just get into it. I'm nervous. Like, I can feel my heart elevate. Like, let's do it.
We're going to make it even worse, because this time the subcategory is your specialty, geography.
Oh, no. Like, I'm really freaking out. Okay.
So this one is going to be exceptional. But I've laid a lot on you. I'm going to try to make it as easy as I can and give you the best.
That one I'm even more self-conscious about, because that makes me sound like, okay, science, it's like, all right, you didn't memorize some basic scientific principles, but geography gets really closely linked to you are an ignorant jackass who doesn't care about others, and you're so narcissistic and you're egocentric, and the world, all of that, like, and it fits, and it falls into that stereotype of the ignorant American, and so I'm very worked up right now. Thank you for this.
Well, I'm going to try to make it as easy as I can, and the structure that I'm going to do is, here's how it's going to work. I'm going to give you two places, and I'm going to ask you, do they touch? So, do they border each other? So,
wait, that's just pure geography? That's not even science.
Geography is science.
Well, I guess that was dumb to say. Yeah.
You're right.
Sure.
It's not a hard science like physics or, biology or math or whatever.
I'll be honest, it's so tempting to try to pull up the computer and try,
don't cheat.
But I'm not going
Don't
to cheat.
So the way I've done this, it's only two things, and it's do they touch, yes or no. So
oh my
you have
gosh,
a 50.
I hate you so much right now.
You have a 50-50 chance. You have a 50-50 chance.
Okay.
No matter what, just randomly going into it, you ought to get half of these right.
All right. I'm gonna do a little reasoning aloud. So I know you'd want me to, but I don't want to.
You can maybe. All right, but we'll start close to home, sort of. We'll start with some U.S. states. So
okay.
How about Kentucky and Tennessee? Do they touch?
Well, they're near each other for sure. Yes.
You're right. Yes, they do touch.
I mean, look. Okay. Like, I felt more than 50% saying yeah. Like, I felt like yes is going to be my answer. It wasn't a total guess, but, like, man, okay. Let's keep going.
Vermont and New York.
No.
Wrong. They do touch. They're right next to each other. Yeah, the New England states, those are tough. I think about that.
Yeah, up in the Northeast. Look at me, Northeast.
Nice.
Like, I just figured you were setting me up for they're near each other, but they're not. So that's what.
Missouri and Arkansas.
I'm gonna say yes.
You're right. They do touch.
Okay.
Iowa and Wyoming.
See, we're getting into sort of mid. Man, I don't want to say yes because there's been a lot of yeses so far, but I'm gonna just say yes.
No, they're not. They're pretty far. They're pretty far from
Pretty
each
funny.
other.
Like it's a pretty.
That's
funny
a pretty funny
answer.
one to mess up.
Okay.
Iowa is like a Midwest, state
just
smack
think of-
in the middle, and Wyoming is, in the mountains and Yellowstone and all that.
Flyover country, like yeah.
Well, they're both flyover country.
That's the point. They're all.
You're right.
They're in there.
All right, South Dakota and Kansas.
Oh, Bennett. No.
You're right. They don't touch. That was a guess. I could tell that was a guess.
Because the hesitation. I don't even know why I'm hesitating. Like just like as if I'm going to conjure up something that's going to inform me better.
Yeah, those are right in the middle. Nebraska's in between them. We've been to Kansas and Nebraska, I think.
Fun fact: I
Briefly.
often ask David where I have been.
Right.
Like, it's sort of like, oh, have I been there?
Let's do Arkansas and Kansas. Arkansas and Kansas.
No.
You're right. They don't touch. Huh. Surprised you got that one.
I think it was just somewhere along when I was a kid studying the states. Like, you see Arkansas and you're like, oh, they're not even right next to each other. So, huh.
Yeah, Arkansas is a weird state name. It's one of my least favorite state names, just because Arkansas and it's spelled like Arkansas, and like Kansas is there too. Like, what's your game?
What
here?
is Arkansas like? What are they doing? Like, what do they have to offer? Like, what are they known for? Like their barbecue sauce or something? Like, I don't think so.
I don't know very much about Arkansas. The Ozark Mountains are in Arkansas. Bill Clinton, I think, was from Arkansas.
Yeah,
That's about
he
it.
was the governor.
Yeah, I think that's right. That's as much as I know about Arkansas. So.
I mean, it has sort of a reputation for being like having some southern culture, but it's not from the South kind of thing in the way that. Anyway.
All right. So, what about Florida and Georgia?
Yeah, I can confidently say they touch.
No, Georgia is a country near Russia and Turkey, and Florida is the United States state. So,
okay,
you got that one wrong. What about Florida and Alabama?
Yeah, they do because of the panhandle up there.
Yeah, you're right. What about Florida and Louisiana?
This feels like a trick question. I'm going to say no, and you're going to tell me actually there's some small little spot where they touch.
Actually,
I'm saying no.
Actually, they do not. They do not touch. No.
Okay.
But that little spot, Florida touches Alabama over there. It doesn't quite make it to Mississippi, and then Louisiana's right next to it.
Okay.
All right. What about Saskatchewan and Nova Scotia?
No.
Do you know where either of those places are?
We don't have to get into that.
You're right. They don't touch.
But they sounded different.
They're Canadian. They're both Canadian provinces. So.
Oh.
What about Mexico and Venezuela?
No.
Yes, you're right. They don't touch.
All right, I'm doing well.
They're in separate continents.
Internationally.
Separate continents, even. What about Uruguay and Tanzania?
I'm going to say, yeah, they do.
No, they don't. No.
Okay.
Uruguay is in South America and Tanzania is in Africa, so that one's pretty far. That might be the greatest miss in terms of mileage that we have this time. What about Spain and Germany?
I could actually point those out on a map. So
then you obviously know the answer.
So I should be very good at this,
yeah.
but I'm gonna say no.
Yeah, you're right. You knew that one.
I mean,
I could tell confidence in your voice when you said that one.
Like, it's interesting that the real question is when I'm taking these pauses, and I'm really not cheating. Like, I'm thinking, but to ask me exactly what I'm thinking, it would be tough.
I imagine your thoughts are more along the lines of, all right, how many no's have we had? How many yeses in a row?
There's
like
gamifying.
Yeah,
he's
right.
trying to play Bennett more than trying
What would Bennett be trying to trap me with here?
I also have. It's like I've been to Europe and that area, and so I'm vaguely thinking of like Italy's boot,
Right, sure,
and
sure,
I'm like, um, like it's not a very.
Well,
This is kind of how I feel. Like if you, I'm gonna be bold here, but like dumb people, how do they like think about things and make decisions? You really are giving me a good feeling of
what
what
it's
it's
like to
like
be
to
dumb.
truly not, yeah, to be dumb where you're like you're not equipped with the tools to examine, to like make progress through your thoughts to give a more informed answer. But yet you want to try something with
Sure.
your thoughts and you just don't really know. So it's just this smattering of how many yeses and nos have we given, and just the haziest of visualizations of maps and things.
Right, right. Well, there's also the difficulty because like, even though you've been to Europe, going to Europe means nothing when it comes to analyzing what countries border other countries because, a map is an abstraction, basically.
Right.
Like, we don't ever see things in the real world in terms of maps.
Quick aside, should I like I want to defend myself and blame the education system
Go
and
ahead.
maybe
Yeah, go ahead.
like
Teachers
well,
suck, just broadly speaking. All teachers are bad, right?
yeah, broadly speaking, generally that's just true. No, I want to blame others, but obviously I can't. Like here's the like I can't, because at some point I could just say this is embarrassing. I have the tools to rid myself of this embarrassment, and I haven't. So I've just decided that like the utility in like identifying on a map doesn't sound like it's going to help me grow as a person. It's hard to know like what's the usefulness in this other than appearing less ignorant. It would totally be investing in appearances to me, and like so that was it's just difficult to get the activation energy needed to just go, all right, and I crack my knuckles and I like Google like what world map Quizlet like or something, and you just quiz yourself. I don't know. So
Yeah, I think you give yourself too hard of a time. Like, for most people, most of the time, knowing the location of countries and whether they touch, especially on the other side of the world, is totally irrelevant. And like you mentioned earlier, that there's the stereotype of like the self-centered American who doesn't know anything about the world. There's nothing wrong with that because most Americans don't have to think about the rest of the world most of the time. Like, the most important things around you are the things that are immediately around you. The rest of the world is, in almost all seconds of every minute of our life, irrelevant. So, if you're a practical person who has, goals that are right in front of you, then you don't need to know where Azerbaijan is.
I agree. I guess the suggestion, there's this weird link people make between knowing the location and like understanding humanity and culture and stuff. Because I think the implication is when you don't know where it's at on a map, and this is fair. If you don't even know where it's at on a map, then how do I possibly know anything about the culture? Is the link, and saying you were just not interested in other people or like what's going on in the world. It just has this selfish connotation.
Yeah, so I mean, you're right. That is the connotation, and a lot of people, try to get on their moral high horse about that. But the fact of the matter is, or I guess the opinion of the matter is, in my opinion, that you shouldn't care that much about most of the cultures in the world because they have nothing to do with you, and you'll never come into contact with them. They'll never come into contact with you. You won't interact. They'll go about their way, you'll go about your way, and like, you're trying to pay your bills and make your next meal and teach your class. Why do you care about, the culture in Slovenia or something?
No, I mean, look, our culture alone, just our culture or our language is so complex and difficult to navigate as it is. You'll never be an expert
In all
in
cultures.
or in one culture even, so much less try to, you know. But so even I think under if you're in one culture and you learn about another culture, I mean, it's just going to be very limited without spending significant time in that culture and sort of gain a deeper understanding. It's like you'll hear things like, oh, they take their shoes off there, and you try to extrapolate meaning from that in a very simple way that may or may not be accurate. And like, they take their shoes off in the home, inside the home every time, or whatever the culture thing may be. I don't know. I'm just saying, like we it's like we're toddlers studying it and trying to go, what can I what tangible things can I identify? When I believe probably there's a lot of like beliefs that are not quite as tangible, that you'd have to.
You're right. You're right.
Sort of like familial versus
So
individualistic and stuff like that.
We could be charitable to you in this way and say that, if you were given the opportunity to know, so if you could prioritize which cultures of the world you were most familiar with, and you could only pick, like, the small number, what would be at the very top of the list? What would be the number one culture you would want to be absolutely most intimately familiar with?
I mean, I guess I'm going to just say, I don't know if you mean like Western culture or like Southern culture in the United States.
We'll limit it to countries.
Well, United States.
Right, exactly. It's going to be the one that you're a part of. And you could hardly fault anyone for choosing the place that they live, the culture that they interact with every day, as their culture of focus.
Right. It should be. If it's not, then what?
Yeah, if it's not, then what are you doing? Now, that's not to say that's not to say that you can't learn things from other cultures. You certainly can, but you can learn things, without being exposed to other cultures as well. And I don't think there's much elevation to gain on your moral high ground by saying, "Oh, you're an uncultured, self-centered fool who only knows about your own country." I think that's probably a bridge too far.
Yeah, fair.
All right.
Well, now I feel better. Let's
good. Time to ruin your confidence now. All right, Greece and Turkey.
Those are touching.
Yes, you're right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, I hear. Well, I shouldn't. I mean, yeah. No, they're mentioned so frequently together, and they've been, whether it's conflict or whatever. I don't know. So.
Well, and because of food, they sound. Greece and Turkey, like
Greece and Turkey.
Norway and Sweden.
Well, they just seem, like they're pals sharing some culture, so maybe they share a border. So yes.
Yeah, you got that one right too. What about Egypt and Israel?
Yeah. Wait, no.
Yes, they do touch.
Dang. Man.
Messed that one up. What about Papua New Guinea and Nigeria?
No.
You're right. They're very, very far apart. One is half of an island near Australia, and the other one is in Africa. So, what about Iraq and Iran?
I'm gonna say no, although they're close.
Yeah, they do. They share a border.
Dang it, man.
What about Indonesia and China?
I mean, I think so. Yeah.
No, they don't. Indonesia is an island chain, and China. You know what China is? Well, maybe I should explain it. China's a big Asian country. All right, two more. What about Russia and North Korea?
No.
You're right. Yes, they don't touch.
Okay.
Phew. What about, all right, last one. What about Lesotho and South Africa?
Wait, that it sounds like it could be a trick question, but I'm going to say no.
They are perhaps the most bordering countries in the world because Lesotho is completely encapsulated by South Africa.
But it's its own...
Yeah, it's its own country, so that's kind of weird. It's what's called an enclaved country.
Is it the only enclaved country?
There are a couple of other places that are enclaved. They're not really countries. Maybe they're like weird little city-states. I think there's another one called...
That's what... It sounds like disagreements or something, and they said fine, and sort of...
Yeah, probably, something like that. Yeah, there's one in Europe, I think, called San something or other, and then, the one in Italy as well. So there are a few, but they're little city-state type things. Lesotho's a little bigger, but yeah, it's just weird because it's totally inside of South Africa.
Lesotho.
So you didn't do too bad.
Well,
You probably hovered right around that 50-50 mark, maybe a little better.
well, if that's the case, then like, me and random guessing are about about
Right.
competitive when it comes to geography.
Well, you're a scientist. You're a regular old scientist now.
I'm a scientist. Daniel does science.
Daniel did
Geography
science.
edition. I did it. I did it.
I did it.
Well, thanks for that. Like, reorientation of my self-perception.
Right.
Speaking of which, I have a question for you.
Mm-hmm.
Well, let me build to it for a second. I
Okay.
think I'm gonna make a hypothesis that like, generally speaking, it is good to accurately self-evaluate. So to know how successful you are in a domain, whether it's socially, professionally, relationally, whatever, like you want to know what your strengths and your weaknesses are, and it's good to know those things, whether it's to improve on the weakness or to maybe even avoid to some degree the weakness or to exercise the strengths. Like, would you say that's a very agreeable thing to say?
Yes, that seems... Yeah, I would say that's very, very agreeable, and I also tend to, it's a pretty core philosophy to me as well, so...
Well, and I also think, by the way, that oftentimes we do this thing professionally specifically where they're like, identify your weakness and then improve upon it, right? So like we don't want to be bad at things, so identify it and put your energies toward improving, which I'm not sure is a great way to think about it, because shouldn't we play to our strengths if we have natural gifts and talents? Like, shouldn't we... Where do you want to spend your energy? Like, to me, it makes sense to exercise your strengths. I'm not saying completely ignore your weakness, but if your weakness is not something you like, why put your energy frequently into making yourself going from terrible to kind of bad with tons of your energy? Now imagine you can go from really good to great in an area. Like, so I would rather level up from really good to great than terrible to kind of bad. And like, it would be more fulfilling, rewarding. It's a strength. Usually your strengths give you joy because you're experiencing success. So have you ever thought about that?
No, I haven't.
Do you see what I'm saying, though?
I see what you're saying. But
identify your weakness and improve upon it. It's like, well, maybe.
Yeah, maybe. I mean, I think it's, it depends on the circumstances. And I guess you would have to evaluate whether spending time on your weakness is a waste of time or is it useful? Does it build character in a way that you can, transfer to other areas of your life? I mean,
I suppose too, there's almost like, if your weakness must be utilized frequently at
Yeah.
work. So you're bad at writing emails and you tick people off with your tone or something,
Right.
and everyone's like, man, you're too serious, and you have to write emails daily, then I'd say that's a weakness you need to engage in and
Right.
improve upon.
Right, but if you're a software engineer, say, and you have a weakness for public speaking, then, well, you almost never have to exercise that skill. And so, if you devoted an excessive amount of time to improving that weakness, it would kind of be wasted effort. When you
Right,
could,
you have 2 meetings a year where you have to go in and present a project, and you're not really that great at it. Like,
Right.
but you're good at producing the work for it. You're just not good at the presentation component. And they've given you feedback like, hey, your presentation skills, you kind of don't project, your shoulders are slumped, whatever.
Right.
So you spend a lot of energy to get better at that, and it makes you anxious because you're not that great at it. Whatever. Like, that just seems like not a good idea.
Yeah, I mean, it seems like the more appropriate thing to do, from, like, if you were a manager and you had an employee like that, like, you might you might give them some quick tips or something, but like, if they're just bad at it, but they're a star programmer, then what I would do is I would say, okay, we're going to put you in the back and let you program all day, and you tell us how it works and we'll have someone else present it. That's what I would do. Like, it would be more the play to your strengths type approach.
I mean, that just seems generally smarter. ideally you would run a business of some sort that has a bunch of employees exercising their strengths and having successes versus belaboring the point of their shortcomings and, kind of being miserable and making slow gains in that.
So let me also try to push back in a different way. So we can both acknowledge that, our lives are fairly long. We live to be, 80 years old. And with recent advances in medical technology, we can expect to live even longer than that, even 85 or 90 years old. So, if we're going to live lives that are 100 years long, then that's a lot of time to put in. You could conceivably have 110 years to develop your skills, 120 years, 130 years even, to become a well-rounded human being.
What are you going to do with those 140 years?
I don't know. 150 years is a long time to spend. So,
God. It's not even a funny joke.
That's what's funny about it. So stop that. Stop criticizing my jokes. But anyway, my real point is that might it be best to target, when you're 80, to be a well-rounded human being with no significant weaknesses. There's nothing that anyone can throw at you that would destroy you, basically. Like, you could be, even if you're just kind of bad, that's better than being an abysmal counterproductive failure at whatever. Like, you should at least shore up your weaknesses so that nothing can destroy you. How does that sound as an approach?
Yeah, and instead of it might be more convincing to me to say, all right, so you have a kid instead of the old person, and your job, you're a parent or a teacher, and they are shy, and they don't necessarily want to be around a lot of people. But I could see what you're saying. It's like, well, look, I'm not asking you to be Mr. or Ms. Social over here, but like, we're gonna push you. Like, you need to lean into, like, you being able to communicate with people effectively is just
that's a core skill.
It's a core skill. So push that kid to, and I mean, I guess aspirationally, education attempts to make you decent in all like intellectual domains, and obviously just going to school is a necessarily social construct in which you this is where bullying comes in. Like, it really is designed to say, look, you're misbehaving, you're too weak in this area, get it together.
Right.
That's the utility of bullying anyway.
Which is that phrase just seems like a controversial thing to say. The utility of bullying. But I think that, like, again, that's
it exists for a purpose, though. Saying you're misbehaving in our social norms. There are consequences to those.
Yeah, well, it's a fact that has to be acknowledged, because whether you think that bullying goes too far sometimes, which it certainly does.
Of course, that's what even the word bully implies almost too far.
I think you're right. But I think that, and I could be wrong here, since I've been out of school for a while. Well, I guess I've been out of like in-person, like classroom style school for a while. Like, the modern interpretation of the word bullying, it encompasses everything. It's so broad that poking fun, at another classmate would be considered bullying, regardless of how innocuous, it might be. Like, if you insult a classmate, then it could be construed as bullying. All it takes is for, one student to say, that was mean or hurtful or bullying. Only one person has to call it out, even if they weren't the target of the bullying, and it could get blown up into a big thing. Do you think that's true?
Yeah, I think from an education standpoint, when you hear that bullying's happening, it's as the adults trying to care for kids, your job at that point is almost investigatory, at least, to say, all right, there's this accusation of bullying. I need to take care. I need to address this. This needs some form of addressing. And and different schools offer up different definitions. Like, one definition I find interesting is repeated unwanted behavior. So the person has made it clear that they do not want that behavior to, because that bullies always say their cop out is, I was just kidding, or they're being too uptight, or I was just playing, I was just messing around. It wasn't a big deal. And so I guess because that's so frequently the defense of the bully, what you do is you have a definition that says, well, is it clear on some level that they don't like this? Like they're saying no or stop, or they're getting worked up to some degree, and that you are continuing to do it. And that I like that definition because it avoids, like, a kid makes one joke about with a friend or something and it hurts the friend's feelings. Like, that doesn't seem like bullying. Or even if they don't like each other, one bad moment in isolation, it's hard to, like, bullying seems active and there's a maliciousness.
Right,
like, despite your desires, I'm continuing forward and, like, gonna make you pay for whatever transgression I perceive. So and also another note too is that, like, okay, well, it's recess, and what's the, I mean, I think you learn a lot at recess as a kid. You
Definitely.
get to develop the games, and there's conflict resolution that you have to, like, you're the kids, you get to develop the game, meaning you have to enforce the rules, and you get to decide when someone's like, oh, that was out of bounds, or oh, that was a foul, or whatever the thing is.
Right.
Like, it's really healthy for kids to have to, if an adult was to go micromanage each moment and weigh in every time, that's not healthy. And so,
no, that's just another classroom.
yes, and in fact, in the classroom, I want, when there's disagreement, there's an art to, like, at what point do I, like, and they're starting to get passionate in a disagreement, like, okay, this is good, and I like that there's passion. Now we're edging into a little bit uncomfortable territory, and, you know, this is where the art of teaching comes in, right? Like, when do you say, all right, like, I'm going to intervene, or you just crossed the line right there. Let's, like, call attention to that moment. That's where we step across the line. And that could be different for different people. And if you are a kid raised in recess that has, you know, adults watching, teachers watching the whole time, and every little transgression that kids commit, because they're committing them all the time, I imagine, they're kids, and you're fixing it for them, then when did they develop any conflict resolution skills? So, like, it's weird to say that possibly a teacher should allow some bullying, maybe. Like,
well, I mean,
like,
you have to think about it this way too. Like, one of the purposes of the classroom is to prepare students for the real world. Like, it's a safe, controlled environment in which you're kind of presenting a microcosm of everything they might encounter, right? Kind of.
yeah.
And
That's
so,
the idea, anyway.
in the real world, there are bullies. I mean, there are mean, malicious people who will repeatedly do things you don't want to you. And there's not going to be a teacher around, you know, to tell them to stop. Like, there may be a time when there is no authority figure that you can easily appeal to, but you have to learn how to deal with that situation. You have to develop some resilience. And so, if the classroom is supposed to be a microcosm of the real world, then, you know, you could say that, you know, bullying is an experience that everyone should have once or twice, just so that they know what it feels like. It's important to know what it feels like so you know not to behave that way, and it's important to know what it feels like so you know how to deal with it.
Right. Because, I mean, it's like if you run to HR, or that's the adult version of going and tattling, right? First of all, a kid should go tell an adult once it's crossed some line, and once they're beyond their capabilities of conflict resolution. But it's important to take a note that it's very healthy to try and resolve that conflict internally before going elsewhere. Mm-hmm. I mean, I exercise this with students too. Like, I have a student, maybe they didn't do their homework, and I pull them aside and have a conversation. All right, second time. Like, I don't go straight to their parents or to admin. I mean, we have a system in place where you can report and send all this stuff. But to me, that's like going nuclear with it. Like, no. Let's if it's a kid who, like, just let them know, I see this. This is the first time it's happening. Let's make sure it's not a pattern. Yes, there's going to be consequences, but, like, I'm not running to your parents right now, because I know that means lost phone for them. It means whatever. It can mean some punishments for them, and also escalation and introducing a lot of tension in our classroom dynamics, possibly with resentment, and that's just gonna not be good for learning.
And it takes away agency from the kid. You know, if the kid can resolve their own problems with you and their peers, then, well, that's an independence building situation. Even if they have a really unpleasant time about it, it still helps them learn that they have agency to deal with a difficult situation.
Right. And so, I mean, I didn't mean to get. We kind of went far down the bullying path. I'm trying to follow the train there because I wanted to get to. It was about focusing on strengths, instead of weaknesses. But you were pushing back about weakness.
Sure. Right.
And so I kind of had a follow-up question. Like, we want to self-evaluate accurately, but are there times when that's not the case? Like that to have a completely accurate perception is not useful, and it would be more harmful. And essentially, is there utility in self-deception or even self-delusion to some degree? Like, and when would that be?
Interesting question. I would have to say that there is utility in self-deception sometimes. Well, it also kind of means it depends on what self-deception is, because that term is a little cloudy. Like you could ask, is it even possible to self-deceive? Because, like, don't you know when you're lying to yourself? And if you know you're lying to yourself, is it really lying, or are you just behaving in a way that you know isn't right or isn't efficient or whatever?
Yeah,
we
can
don't
you
have
knowingly lie to yourself?
we
don't know.
We don't have to get into the semantics of it, because I think when you ask, is self-delusion useful sometimes, I think most people probably kind of know what you mean. But still, it's an interesting concept. But let's put aside whether or not you're lying to yourself. It's definitely true that people sometimes will tell themselves a lie, and they'll act out something that's not true in order to attain some end. And your question is really, is it ever useful to do that? So one thing that kind of springs to mind of when that might be useful is, like, if you have something really anxiety-inducing or intimidating or momentous in front of you, and you need to psych yourself up. You need to, get hyped up and go, I can do this. I can do this. And really amp yourself up to do something that maybe it truly terrifies you. And you tell yourself you're not afraid, and you're like, I'm not scared of this. I'm not scared of geography. And then you go and you do a geography question. Like you're lying to yourself because you're really terrified of geography. But then you do it, right?
And
then once
I was able to engage because
you lied to yourself.
Lied to myself. Yeah.
And then once you do it, the hope is that you realize that you've become more capable, and you really have no reason to be as scared of geography as you originally were. Does that seem like a valid time to self-delude, or is that kind of what you're talking about?
Yes, my thoughts go a bit differently and tend to be when working. So here's where my thoughts go when I hear about the utility of deception, self-deception. The phrase, like, you can't please everybody, like everybody's a critic kind of thing. And so it tends to, when you are working with a crowd, I'm a teacher, right? I always have students, and even like classes that are amazing and awesome and I appreciate, like, you're just not going to get 100% buy-in 100% of the time. So no matter what decision you make, you are going to lose some of your, I'll call them audience, they're students, but
sure.
I'd say this is true for comedians or any performers of any kind. Like, every decision risks alienating some portion of your audience. Not only risks, but will.
Definitely. I mean, people are so varied and have different experiences and viewpoints and moods, even. All of that stuff.
Attention spans.
Yeah.
Like,
all of that stuff varies. Even within a single person, that stuff varies over time. So certainly within a crowd of, a couple dozen, a couple hundred, or a couple thousand, you're going to have variances in all of those groups.
And so, and I think about whether it's people famous on YouTube or whatever, like reading comments is probably just, I mean, that's such a black hole. Like I would not want to go there
Sure.
because the self-doubt that could creep in and the affirmation, the weird mixture and our tendency to, this might full circle back to like we can have a tendency to concentrate on shortcomings. You know, you see 10 comments that are praising and one says you're stupid or whatever, and you focus in on that. The sensitivity to the negative is almost like evolutionarily wired for safety, right? Like, is this dangerous? Like, if something's good, it doesn't attract me as much because it doesn't risk my safety. Whereas something bad could spell out, you know, some criticism. Anyway, so all of this could be debilitating if I were to completely understand that one student who doesn't like me. To me it's more useful, again, is this a lie or not, or just to go, yeah, maybe they're not wild about me, and I have to sort of paradoxically not care about that and then still care about the kid and provide success or opportunities for success for that kid, but not care that they roll their eyes at the joke or that they just aren't into my vibe as a teacher. So I would have to pay attention if that one kid was more like 7 or 8 in my class. I think that'd be if I were to just carry on forward going, I'm doing great work here, screw all the students I have, they just are wrong. Like, then I think that self-delusion is, we've crossed some line of like, I'm doing something that is alienating a lot of my kids. If it's just that one or something, like I think there's utility in going, I'm awesome. I'm not even gonna. I'm gonna keep moving forward as if I'm 100% awesome, and not actually self-evaluate and go, no, I'm only 86% awesome. So it's just better to simplify and go, nope, this is an awesome lesson, or this is an awesome discussion, or this is an awesome moment in class, and just to call it awesome and not qualify. You know what I'm saying? Like the delusion or the deception is not qualifying and just saying all in, that was great. Maybe.
Yeah, right. Yeah, I see what you're saying. I would still wonder, like, is that self-delusion?
I don't know that it is, because that's what I say is like, well, you can't please. I have, these platitudes, can't please everybody.
I mean, you can't please everybody. Is that self-delusion? I mean, that seems...
No, it doesn't sound like it. It's just I accept a certain degree of pushback, but I'm not going to engage in this. It's an excuse to not engage in the criticism, though.
Right. Well, I think that maybe... I think that the edge cases of the situation you're talking about, definitely they can get into self-delusion. So you pointed out one where, if you had a big number of kids in your class who really thought you sucked and they weren't paying attention and they were critical and everything, and you continued despite that to say, no, I'm right, it's the kids who are wrong. Kind of like the Principal Skinner in The Simpsons, who, there's like a meme or whatever where he's like, is it me that's wrong? No, it's the kids who are wrong, or something like that. Anyway, like that's self-delusion. If you persist despite overwhelming feedback, and you tell yourself you're awesome, then that could be self-delusion. On the flip side, if you have nothing but positive feedback, your kids are happy, no one is like trying to kill each other, they're all getting good grades, you get a Teacher of Promise award, all of these good things happen to you, and yet you still like ragging on yourself and saying like, oh God, I suck at my job, oh, I didn't get to the grades in time, and oh, I'm a terrible teacher, then that's, you can kind of be delusional in that sense as well.
Yeah. Well, and that seems almost certainly not useful when you are getting positive affirmations from externally and you're saying, and if you're sincerely saying it, if you're not fishing, there's fishing for compliments, there's lots of other things, reasons people might go, oh, I suck, or something verbally, but let's take it at face value that they really believe themselves to suck. That delusion is the worst kind.
Yeah, that doesn't sound helpful. So, I guess I'm arguing more at the moment. I'm arguing for, just on the whole, it seems, I mean, I still tend to think that it's better to be accurate in your self-assessment rather than delude, one way or the other. Like, wouldn't accuracy be better in most cases?
Let's go to a classic example of raising a kid, and the kids take a hell of amount of like time and energy and resources, and I think you're like, my kid's the best kid in the world, and like again, I'm gonna say that this is self-delusion. Like, they know that their kid's not actually the best, but they emotionally might believe it. This kid really is the cutest. Oh my god. Truly, the empathy that my kid did when they handed me their leftover banana, like that, my kid's so selfless and amazing. So you inflate the importance. You're at the borderline delusional that you're willing to sacrifice your everything for this kid that needs that and will benefit from that. And like, that's delusional to think that your kids, I mean, how many world's greatest dad shirts and stuff too, and
yeah, right.
Mom, and
yeah, in an ideal world, they would have only sold one of those.
that would be it.
Yeah.
Yes.
So not a very good market.
In an ideal world.
In an ideal world, only one person would have a world's greatest dad shirt.
Yes. And maybe when they made a mistake, it would go to someone else.
Yeah, they would have to, give their shirt away.
Really funny.
I used to be the world's greatest dad, and then I had to sell the shirt off my back. Something.
But there's an absolute utility there in going, my kid's worthy of this, when really they're just like a blob of they're becoming a human and all of that, all the things we consider with like sophisticated morals and stuff, but they're just like, well, I mean, this is philosophically debatable, but they're largely like these blank canvases that are like getting instilled with a lot, right? And so, but you're already sold, like you're 100% sold of their value. And like, yeah, I do think humans are inherently valuable. I'm not making a case about that. I'm just saying that I don't think strangers would feel the incredible amount of connection that parents often do, and that's because of there's utility in them being connected.
Yeah, I agree, and I definitely think a lot of people have the behavior that you describe, but still, I'm not convinced. I'm not convinced that there's a discrepancy in outcome between the parent who says, my kid is the best kid in the world, and no one can tell me otherwise, which is what you describe, and is, I think, self-delusion, and the parent who goes, like, my kid is just a kid. He's really important to me because he's my kid, but, like, is he the best kid in the world? Like, I mean, he's just one of, almost 8 billion people out there. Like, it would be foolish to say that he's the best kid in the world. Now, is he the most important subjectively to me? Yes, but that's distinct from saying he's the best kid in the world. Like, the second parent seems to have an accurate, non-delusional view of his kid. And to me, it seems like he would be able to raise the kid just as dutifully as the first parent, who in fact, like, that kind of delusion, you can imagine situations in which that delusion could get that parent in trouble. Like, when the kid is at his little league baseball game and the other world's greatest dad on the other little league team says, like, oh, strike him out, little Billy, strike him out, this guy can't bat. Blah. And then, Billy's dad's like, what are you talking about? My little Billy, he's the best batter on the field, blah, blah, blah. You can, and they're both delusional little league dads or soccer moms or whatever the case is. And, it gets them in trouble. Whereas the more accurate parents, the more accurately assessing parents in the stands are all laughing at how crappy little league baseball players are. But, but
it's cute.
But it's cute. And, it's good for the kids to learn team building and get outside and run around and blah, 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 and they're just having a good time. Like, that seems non-delusional. So, am I parodying things here, or do you think I got the right of it?
So, yeah, well, I guess you're right. I'm just trying to think if there is any utility in the delusion, then, And delusion's an intentionally provocative word. I think that's clear. What about this, then? Like, I mean, I don't know, we've heard arguments that we're not designed to actually be so interconnected. Like, we were meant to be in almost tribal type small, so we could be the best runner, the best thinker. You could find your expertise within the hierarchies within your small culture, and you could be near the top of that hierarchy and experience a lot of success.
Right.
So then all of a sudden when we are global, like the world is all interconnected, it's so clear that you're not that talented. Even the thing you're best at, you might be 10 millionth
Right,
in
right.
that hierarchy, because it's a global hierarchy now. And that is not really useful to fully conceptualize precisely how good you are at something. It's better to inflate and go, I'm the best in on this corner or in this market or in this localized hierarchy, and I should feel good about that. So I'm not even like, I'm just gonna go ahead and kind of internally proclaim like, this is my thing. I'm the best at it. I get that your pushback is, I
It's
think
going to be
that,
the same,
well,
right?
it's the same thing. Like, yeah, I don't know if we're just semantics, but like, what I'm saying though, there maybe it's not delusion, but I do find it interesting that pure truth seeking isn't the most effective thing all the time. Like, it's just not useful to go exactly where, how good am I at this thing? That might not be the best question.
Yeah, no, I agree with you there. Like learning exactly how many to the number humans are better at geography than you, like isn't useful. First off, no one can count that high, so like that's just going to be, and there are going to be more people born in the intervening time before you can even figure out the answer, and so your position is constantly going to be shifting. But anyway, like, yeah, it's not practical, it's not useful to know exactly where you fall, but to have a general idea. Like, again, I think there it's probably important to be accurate and not delusional and say, I'm the best in the world at so and so. Like, you're probably not, right? Like, you're probably
Yeah.
not. But I think it. What was I saying? Oh yeah, like even if you're a world class athlete or something, like it still, I think, edges into delusion territory to say, I'm the best in the world. Although maybe that's an instance where self delusion is useful because, if you say I'm the best boxer in the world and you truly are delusional, then that might inspire other people who see your delusion to try to take you down, and it fosters, competition and entertainment, of course,
Well,
for the
yeah, no,
people
actually,
watching.
quick, like Michael Jordan, I watched the documentary on Netflix. I forget what it's called. It was awesome, and like he really presented as a modern day warrior, like the person who would be a warrior, but we're not in warfare that way currently. So it's, it takes place in athletics and on the court. And so what he would do, and he did this enough times that and confused enough other players that that it is a funny pattern. He would invent something that they said, that some trash talk that they said, and he would actually go up to them and said, "I'm like, I'm gonna make you pay for that, like on the court or whatever." He would start, he would develop this fictionalized narrative of them saying they were better than him or that they were gonna show him or
Oh,
something, and then he would, and it would be one of their strong players, their A-listers, their awesome player,
right.
and he would just absolutely wreak havoc on them. And so he, and I find this fascinating. Like, he would dominate them athletically by developing their attitude toward him, just
Interesting.
fictionalizing it, and it was so useful for him.
Yeah, that definitely seems like a useful situation of self delusion, right?
Yes, because that is absolute. That goes into delusion. Not just that is like that didn't happen, and it would get weird. They would go, "Wait, is he serious? Does he think I said that?" And he wasn't concerned with the truth there. I think he did start to believe it.
Hmm.
Like, he might take a moment where they said, "Yeah, I can't wait to." It's crazy that I grew up watching Michael Jordan and now I get a chance to play him, and he would, you know, and it was meant out of respect, and he would turn it into something else and start these little, I'm gonna call them feuds, but just to see that pattern emerge was like, this guy, like, he needs to get up for things, and he likes to, this helps him, so he invents these stories.
Hmm.
So
See, that's kind of like getting amped up, kind of like I said, but
yeah,
in
yeah,
a different and more delusional way in a sense, because now you're totally fabricating things that didn't happen to.
And perhaps it really is when you're like arguably are the best, if you can say that.
So let me ask another question then. Obviously, doing what Michael Jordan did on the baseball field to amp himself up to bat harder than all of his opponents. That was useful for him in terms of winning games and accumulating fame, but
winning a lot of champion bowls. Yeah,
winning a lot of champion bowls and manufacturing a lot of tennis shoes. That was very useful in that arena, but it, his relationships with other players suffered, and even,
he's a jerk. Like generally, that's an accepted thing. Like in order to be that level, the cost is this, and everything you're probably going to detail. Like,
and it's probably a hard case for me to sell, but like now, he doesn't play basketball professionally anymore. Like he's not on any NBA team, and whatever. He's a has-been basketball player. He's a has-been one of the greatest basketball players.
So weird to call
ever.
Michael Jordan a has-been,
but he is. That's accurate, right? Just don't
accurate.
delude yourself. It's accurate to say Michael Jordan is a has-been. I mean, he has been, arguably the best player, but he's not anymore. And now he's left with, without being able to go out on the basketball court and stomp people, he's left with a reputation as a jerk in many areas. Now I know it's not an easy sell, because he's also like, he can sit in his mansion with his millions and millions of dollars and be a jerk all he wants, and he's still a millionaire. So
right.
It's easy to make the case that it turned out useful for him ultimately, but it depends on your values, I guess. Like, now that he's old and not playing anymore, is it more useful to have been a little bit better than normal in some of your games, or is it better to have a reputation as a class act sportsman?
Yeah, I mean, there's definitely a cost there. Ultimately, in his case, I'm going to buy that it was worth it, but like, but I guess it isn't just, are there no costs to self-delusion? The answer is going to be there are always costs to ignoring reality. There's almost a baked-in cost, but
right.
Is there utility? And that's
the
more interesting end, I think.
Yeah, and utility, in order for something to have utility, you almost have to consider the time scale, because there are things you could do that would be useful in the short term and detrimental in the long term. And in some cases, the short term is more important than the long term. Like if you have a limited time to live, if you know that next week you're going to get hit by a bus or something, then it might, the actions with the most utility might be things that are delusional in the short term, and it might actually be more worth it to engage in short term gratification rather than long term.
Like what are you thinking specifically?
No, I'm not thinking about anything specifically. I'm just saying that time scales are important to consider. I mean, with Michael Jordan, it was important for him to delude himself in the moment to win a basketball game and, put off the potential long-term consequences. I mean, an alternate reality could have played out where one of these other players said, I didn't say that. Like, I did not say that. In fact, you're slandering me by saying that, sued him, and Michael Jordan could have been barred from the NBA or something. Obviously this is ridiculous, but depending on what was said and how it was said and how people reacted, like that's an alternate reality that could have played out. And that could have been a situation in which Michael Jordan self-deluding himself,
self-deluding himself, yeah.
Self-deluding himself got, went bad for him.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, that's why, and I think generally speaking, we err toward
Air Jordan. ERR Jordan. Air Jordan. That's funny. I like that joke.
I like that you like it so much. But like, yeah, I mean, not surprisingly, in our discussion, we are like kind of championing truth here. It's fun. It's fun to sort of think about why we might not always want to do that. Um, yeah,
Oh yeah,
and I think
sure.
about
I mean,
sources of anxiety for me. I was wondering if any of that is like delusion in the bad way. There's not even utility. Like I don't want to have anxiety, Sunday nights before teaching, but like, and then a healthy dose perspective shift of truth of like, it's hilarious to think that people are not thinking about Daniel to like, oh, I hope he's gonna do great tomorrow. Like people aren't thinking about me, and like
oh,
so
I wonder
anxiety
what Daniel's
stems.
lesson is going to be
Yeah,
tomorrow.
yeah, like that's a hilarious thought. Like they're just like, whether it's students or admin or whatever, like they're just like, I'm just a part of a bigger machine that, uh, and so that's actually comforting to me. And so it's almost always perspective shifts toward truth. Well, what's interesting is like, but my anxiety isn't necessarily rooted in some lack of truth. It's just bringing in truth or bringing in a different perspective helps. Delusion is bringing in a different perspective that might not be real, um,
Right.
and that perspective could still have utility. It seems like over time, like you were saying, it's going to dry up. Like it it cannot be good to sustain visions that are or ideas that are at odds with reality. They just can't
Yeah,
long term play.
right.
Yeah.
And like I say, that's part of my core philosophy is that, eventually reality is going to slap you in the face and make itself known. And that's very unpleasant. If you were living in La La Land and you had a totally different idea of the way things were, and then reality slaps you in the face, that's extremely unpleasant. If you live in reality normally and you daily acquaint yourself with, the goods and bads and your failings and your strengths, and you have a good sense of where all of that stuff lies, then when reality presents itself to you, it's not a shock, and you go, oh yeah, that's kind of what I thought, and it's not that bad, you can handle it. But I mean, if you're delusional, then that can be a nasty surprise. And,
Yeah.
and it's hard for me to, like, I'm struggling to think of situations where the both short-term and long-term self-delusion can be all that helpful. I mean, I can think of plenty of short-term examples, like, there's a lot of social appeal, potentially, in self-delusion. Like if you want to fit into a group, and then you can get yourself in good graces with that group by deluding yourself that you agree with them, or that you have the same interests, or
Or you could like, okay, the school or whatever work environment you have, it might be useful to say like, this is a great school, or great, for me, I'm using school, but like elevate the reputation of the school and the your colleagues, you know.
sure, right, yeah. And you could see a situation where, yeah, maybe the school is just whatever, but you say, yeah, I work for a great institution, we're devoted to education and the well-being of our students, and my colleagues are all, top intellectuals, they're all really bright and wonderful, and I have a lot of pride to work where I work, and that gives you some peace, and it gives you a reason to get up in the morning and go in and teach with your head held high, and that seems kind of useful. But if that's not accurate, if you believe that and the school really sucks and the principal is embezzling money, and the kids' standardized test scores are far below average, and there's one teacher molesting the students, and
Jeez.
things are going wrong in the school, and here you are
Yeah.
walking in with your head held high saying, I work for a prestigious institution. Well, you can imagine how that delusion might get cold water thrown on it at some point.
Yeah. And I wonder how much the cost is for that.
Well, it could be high, but again, I paint a really extreme picture. People delude themselves all the time in very minor ways, and reality does slap them in the face, but also in minor ways. It's all proportional. Like,
Yeah.
when like, you may think that you're decent at something, and you're actually delusional to think that you're decent at something, and then when you actually try it, like, and you do really poorly at it, then, that slaps you in the face, and you go, oh, I guess I'm not as good as I thought I was. But, if it was something like geography, again, like if you thought, obviously you didn't think you were that good at geography, which is good, it was accurate, but if you thought you were just okay at it, like maybe, what's something that you think you're okay at?
That's spelling?
Spelling.
Average at spelling?
Yeah, you're average at spelling. You're an English teacher, so, it would be strange for you to think that you're less than average at spelling. But, if I picked 10 words and got you to spell them, and, you missed a few of them, then you might have a small shock and go, oh, I guess I'm not quite as good at spelling as I thought I was. But that wouldn't destroy your self-confidence, your self-image, or, your career as a teacher, because it's a small shock and probably a small delusion.
Well, here's a closing thought for this whole thing. Then, if you are going to embark on any field of study, or just really if you embark on any path, like I'm a beginner and I would like to be an expert. An appropriate or a very accurate self-perception would be like how bad and how abysmal you are compared to the people who are on this path, like the experts and stuff. You would know precisely how poorly you are performing in this domain. And so that could be debilitating, or like it could just be depressing and make you never want to begin a path. So I think there could be utility in, you start it and you're no expert. You have some idea that you're not an expert. You have some success, and that little success makes you go, oh, I'm not half bad at this. But like reality would come in and go, no, actually you're still horrible. You think you're doing well, but your path is so far and it's so laborious to move forward. If you actually want to get good, that could really deflate a lot of people. So I'm saying that initial beginner experiences of success, like that's fine. Hold on to a little delusion. Think see the improvement as better than it actually is.
You're describing. Have you heard of the Dunning-Kruger effect?
The what?
Dunning-Kruger effect.
Oh yeah, where you think you know a lot about something, and then you realize
That's basically
right as you're learning about cars. You're like, oh, I'm an expert on cars because I know more than
automatic transmission, manual transmission. I know both of those transmissions.
Pistons.
So,
dual
spark plug, exhaust.
Catalytic converter,
oil,
dipstick,
wheels,
lug nuts. Okay, I'm
done. Like that. You're basically describing the Dunning-Kruger effect. If you've ever seen the graph, then it's like this big hill at the start, and then a big dip when you realize you're not as smart as you thought you were, and then a gradual ascent as you slowly gain real knowledge, and one might say wisdom. And a lot of people find themselves on the peak of that first hill. They think they know a lot about something, and they really just aren't. They're really delusional.
That graph, what is that? The hill, like, is it just like perception of expertise? Like, what is it?
Yeah, like self-perception of expertise, knowledge, whatever.
And how humbling it is. I mean, I played Clash Royale, and when I had played after a few months, and I was on like level, I mean, it won't make any sense to you or a lot of people, so I won't go far into it, but like, I'd been playing for like 6 months. I understood the cards for the most part, and I was like, man, I'm good. Like, I just did not understand how far I had, I was blind to so many of the moves that were being made. Like, you can't see it all on the board the way, like, an untrained eye can't see what I'm seeing, and I even watch experts now, and they're able to predict the other cards of players based on one card. They'll be like, oh, this is most likely a lava hound balloon, a lava loon deck, like stuff like that. It's just
tough
anyway.
break.
My point is, the Dunning-Kruger effect, like, is, but okay, I guess I'm saying that it's useful.
That's what you're trying to argue. It's useful to be on top of that hill where you think you're really good at something, but but I'm not convinced yet. So,
Well, something to think about.
yeah, I mean, yeah, maybe you can amp yourself up. Maybe you can use it for. I mean, I can see that it can be useful in short-term situations, and you may get lucky, and it may turn out that the short term is all that matters to you. Due to circumstance, like, maybe maybe at your job or something, you delude yourself into thinking you're the best, and you act that way, and you're a real jerk to your colleagues, and they all think you suck. But then the school goes out of business, and you transfer somewhere else, and so all of those bad repercussions, then you never experience them. You only get the positive, and you never see the negatives. So it can be useful in those situations, but you have to get lucky for that. And if you take that attitude to your next place of work, you're probably going to pay the cost there.
I guess in a very big way, though, I'm just saying, like, we need to believe that our existence is important. But
can't you accurately do that?
I'd like to think so. I think there are a lot of nihilists or whoever that would go, like, this is all meaningless. And if you take the biggest picture perception, then it's all crap or something like that,
Yeah, I mean, so obviously that's a common viewpoint that, we're just a ball of meat floating through the universe and nothing matters.
Third rock from the sun.
Third Earth from the sun.
This crazy mixed up world.
Yeah, people think that way, but I don't know. I don't think it's right. Like, I think you can accurately assess your value, and even though you are 1 in 8 billion currently, and 1 in uncountable billions, however many billions there have been over the span of history, like, the things you do here and now, they propagate forward. So you influence other people, you influence the next generation, and that next generation influences the next generation. And even though you may have a small effect, it may not be as small as you think, and that carries forward, and it changes the future.
Wow, I'm pumped up. I'm ready to go teach a class. Thank you for the delusional pep talk.
You're probably the most important person in the world. You're probably the most important person in the world.
Well, that's actually a pretty good place to end.
Yeah.
So,
I agree.
The end.
Over.
Over.